Hey folks, this is Shane from Performance EV. Today we're going to try and install the cheapest Android head unit I could get my hands on. Hey folks, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you new to this channel, this is my project to put a Nissan Leaf motor into a Porsche 911. Now, over the last few weeks, we've been working on trying to figure out what how the battery is going to fit in the car, and that is ongoing. But in order to do that, I needed to be able to maneuver the car in and out of the garage. And whenever I'm doing that, I want to know what's going on in the inverter. And the inverter has a Wi-Fi circuit on it, so I can basically log into it on a tablet and see what's happening. But that means I'm basically trying to find somewhere to place this old Android tablet in the car, usually propped up somewhere slightly dangerous where it's going to fall down and potentially get stuck between the brake pedal and the floor, or jam my throttle pedal in or something like that. So I figured if I'm going to be moving the car in and out a lot, I need some way that I can keep an eye on what's going on in the inverter in a way that isn't going to either jeopardize things or risk me damaging something. So for that, I went online, I went onto eBay, and I decided to try and find an Android head unit. And turns out they're a lot cheaper than I thought they were going to be. Yes, you can get brand name ones that are hundreds of pounds, or you can just sort by price and choose the cheapest one that actually looks like a genuine head unit and give that a try. So before I recorded this intro, I did a bit of an unboxing. So why don't we go and take a look at the unit in the box, and then we'll come back and install it in the car. So here's the package as it turned up in the post. Let's take a look and see what's inside. All right, we've got electrical stuff, mounting bracket, variety of cables, and the unit itself, which is ridiculously small and light. That's cool. All right, let's get it out of its plastic here. Pretty comprehensive kit. So this is the main unit here. Basic Android style buttons on the side, volume, and then we've got our various inputs at the back. We'll go into those in a moment, including your aerial, GPS, and then I guess things like power and the speakers and all that sort of stuff. So it looks like we've got GPS receiver, two USB connections, got a video in potentially, along with a connection to the brake, then auxiliary ins and outs, and then the kind of power switch live and all that sort of thing that comes in. Let's take a look at the manual. So we've actually got very decent instructions here. Goes through both connectivity and how to switch it on, but probably most importantly is the kind of pin outs and wiring and that. So this is your main connection with power, and then the speaker outputs. So we've got front and rear, left and right speaker positive and negatives, being about half the wires in here. Then you've got signal for an automatic antenna, various 12 volt signals for both the supply, the ground, as well as for hitting the accessory point on the power on your ignition switch, as well as actually fully switching it on. Then we've also got, as we said, our 2 USB cables. This is the signal in for a reversing camera, and then audio and video inputs and outputs for any auxiliary things, so if we're going through an amp or anything like that. So I think what we're going to have to do is power this up and see how it works. So they've very helpfully already given you the exposed wire that you need for the different things. So what we're going to take first is a constant 12 volt and a ground wire. So for ground we're looking at the black, and for constant 12 volt the yellow. So these are the two chunkiest wires in this part of the loom, which makes sense if they are the constant power. All right, it won't let me turn it on without that. So let's see what the red wire taking power does to this. Switching on. So on startup, we're getting into I guess a home screen or a home app, which should be pulling things like speed, and from which you can access basic controls. You've got navigation, phone, music, Wi-Fi, and I'm guessing playing media. Looks like you can see what music's on. You've also got the time. I'm assuming this is something that can be changed. I'm sure there's configuration for it. If we click the back button, then we go to a more standard Android style homepage. So you've got Chrome for your browser, which, why wouldn't you want to browse while driving? Also got YouTube, so I can watch my videos. As well as, probably most importantly, the Google Play Store. Because one of the main reasons for getting this unit is I want to be able to put on apps that can take things like ODB2 signals or signals from the inverter itself, and present them in an easy to see manner, so I can keep an eye on things that maybe aren't coming through the standard dash. So as promised, this seems to be on Android 8.1, which is what I bought. Yeah, that's really good. All right, I'm going to take this off camera, get it hooked up to my Wi-Fi so I can download a few things. I'm going to take another quick look at it, and then we can look at getting it in the car. So here's where I usually have my tablet once I've logged into the inverter, which is fine. It's a nice big screen, but I kind of have to move it out of the way in order to change the gear, so then I end up putting it down here like this, where it ends up just really being annoying and frustrating. So where we're going to install the head unit is here in this space here. So it's double DIN, so these are 2 DIN size holes, so it's double that. And in order to do that, we'll have to move a few things. So this car didn't come to me with the original stereo, so I have no problems with being a little bit more drastic with what I'm doing here. I think if it had come with the original stereo, the kind of purist nostalgic person in me probably would have wanted to keep the original stereo here, but I don't have it, so we're going to do something drastic. So what I've got to do is basically take the climate control unit out, and I'll probably move it down lower. So this, to be honest, is a a hack that people do on these cars all the time, either to fit a doubled in head unit or for other reasons, and generally they'll move it down to one of these two slots here. So I think what I'm going to do is take it out for now, but ultimately move it down to this slot here, move this control panel down here, and then hopefully in a few weeks time, when I've removed, or when I've actually integrated all this stuff into the circuit, then I'll get rid of this totally, and we'll retain one cubby hole for keeping stuff in. Or I can buy the drinks holders, cup holders for a couple £100, which I don't think I'll be doing. So let's get to it. So I haven't put the any of these trim pieces back in properly yet, so they'll come out nice and easily, and then we should just be able to unclip this trim panel from the front here. So we removed the central bar here that was the divider between the stereo head unit and the climate control system. So there is now plenty of space to fit this in here, and then I'll need to create a kind of bezel to go around it to just make sure it sits flush and looks complete. But I've come across my first challenge with this, and I guess this is what happens when you buy things the cheapest one you can get. So we've got two mounting holes here and a mounting bracket, but there's no way to actually get the mounting holes to line up in the bracket as it's currently made, which is pretty great. So we're either going to have to do something with the bracket, though that being said, I'm not sure how useful this bracket's going to be. What I might actually do is just try and mount this directly in the space here. So figure out how far in I want to go, take some measurements, and then just drill a little hole and put a bolt through into the unit itself. Now we've got our mounting holes in place. Next thing to do is try and get the bare minimum wired up to make sure that we've got the necessary things coming in. So for the short term, that's just going to be power. The connector for the old Sony head unit that was in this thing is like this, and basically what I've got is pretty much the same number of pins. It's just a smaller unit, so I just need to find a pin-out diagram for this to figure out which cables I want. I mean, this was already kind of taking from the original Porsche loom, so there's a bunch of things already kind of plugged in here, so we need to just figure out what we need. So I may even just ignore the Sony head unit and see if I can just find out the wiring diagram for the Porsche one, and plug in the bare minimum there. Okay, so a brief look on the internet leads me to the diagram for this. So this is essentially the power block. So we've got the ability to, well, don't know if this head unit will have it, but the ability to control volume based on speed. An unused pin, a phone mute pin, not relevant here because I don't have a phone. Then we've got power antenna, switched live, fully live, neutral, and illumination. So this is definitely what I want. What I think I'll try and do is just reuse this block, but put it onto my loom here. Okay, so there we have it. We've taken the Sony adapter loom and we've removed the pins from one end of it, so that now our cheap Android head unit has got the adapter plugs available to it, and then we've got our various items coming out of the car here. So these two we're going to ignore. They're for the disc changer. So then we're left with just the cables that are going to plug into the unit. So we've got the antenna, power, speakers, and the amp. Now, interestingly, the speaker connection, what's come out of the Sony head unit is kind of standard positive and negative for front right, front left, rear right, rear left. But what Porsche actually look for, because this car has the amp in it, is a slightly different signal. So I figure that this batch of cabling here is to take those individual speaker signals and turn them into something that the amp can interpret. So I'm hoping this thing still works. Otherwise, we might need to do some rewiring of the entire speaker setup here. But we'll give it a go. All right, so there it is, initial install. I think when I come to sort out the bezel for it, I'll probably lift it up slightly in the space, just make it more centered. But this will do for now. Let's see if it works. All right, so we've got the inverter switched on and we've signed into the Wi-Fi for it. So I can see the current setup, and I guess the fun, interesting, exciting, whatever you want to call it, is we can flag a few of these. And then now, rather than plotting them in a graph, what we can do is show them as gauges. So this will allow me to keep an eye on things happening in the inverter while I'm trying to figure things out. So there we have it. Android head unit installed in the car. It's still got a little bit of things left to be done just to kind of finish it off and make it look fully neat. But then there's a whole heap of things I have to do to this interior to make them look neat and tidy. So I'm not too worried about that for the moment. It means I don't have to go and find the tablet and bring it out with me anytime I need to move the car. I can just hook up to the inverter on the head unit and then see exactly what's going on, so I know what's happening in there, and if anything goes awry I can see it and hopefully resolve it before it becomes a proper problem. That was pretty easy to do. I'm interested to see, once I get all the speakers and everything hooked up, how it sounds, what sort of music I can get through it. But if nothing else, even just having that and navigation available is a big bonus. So I'm looking forward to being able to use it, and yeah, then figuring out the rest of the setup on the car. I think the ideal would be if I could find a way to have an app that would control the climate control rather than having to put in that separate head unit, but that's probably not that feasible in the short term anyway. But yeah, I think we're getting there. Next bits are really going to be to continue on the battery, which is kind of why I did this. I wanted to be able to move the car in and out, and I want to be able to see what's going on in the inverter every time I do it. So yeah, moving on to the battery, and then we'll look at perhaps integrating some of these systems properly into the car, and hopefully being able to go for test drives and that sort of thing. But that's all for the future. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to see others like it, or other EV related stuff that's actually nothing like this video, please consider subscribing. As always, likes and comments are appreciated. And yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.